Alright, so I'm just going to do a special short today on all of the different implements that I have for this WEN 3424T Mini Wood Lathe. This is a 5-speed, so I do change the speeds with a pulley, the belt and pulley. But I just wanted to kind of go over just the few things that I have. I don't have multiple chucks. I don't have a bunch of different size flanges and that. So, alright, so I just used a piece of scrap wood, and we'll start out with the flange chuck. So the flange chuck threads right onto the drive of the lathe. It's a 1-inch thread, 1 8" I think. And when you use this, you want to find your center. You also want to not use drywall screws. When I first started, I didn't really read any instructions or anything. Grabbed some drywall screws. Nothing really happened. But since then, I have heard that you're not supposed to do that because they are a harder screw and they can break, and you don't really want that to happen. So I pre-drilled the holes, put my screws in. Now obviously this is not going to be a great bowl or anything because I put the screws in very close to the edge, but just for demonstration purposes, because I would probably end up turning this into the screws. But just to show you how each one works. Tighten that up, make sure there's no gap. Set all this to the side. Okay, and with the flange, you don't necessarily need your end spindle, the live center, but I'm going to put it in because it just makes everything a little bit safer. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do with this, because none of these chucks are as safe as the jaw chuck, so we're going to get this set up, and I'm going to cut a tenon into this. Now also, the easiest way I have found to know how big to make the tenon is I measure the screw chuck. You probably got a screw chuck with one of these. I'm not sure which one comes with what, but this comes with the jaw chuck. And the way this works is it fits right in there in the exact right position so that it's a perfectly round clamp and you get the most clamping force. You can see how it's clamped all the way around. So this is what I use to make a tenon sometimes. Even if it's bigger, at least you have 8 points of clamping on a bigger circle. Then if I want to make a mortise, and I'll show you that in a little bit, also that would be the same diameter clamped into here. So that's where the circle is. Then I would want to measure, and make sure you do this. Every chuck is made. I think they cut these jaws out of the one piece just to make sure that they all fit and are centered. So you always want to measure the one that came with yours. So we're at about 2 1/4. So if I were making a mortise, I would want to go to about 2 1/4 or so. Alright, so we will go over that in a little bit. first I'm going to make the tenon. Tenon is the strongest, the one that you can trust the most. And I'm going to use my bowl gouge. You don't want to use a roughing gouge on end grain, so we're not going to use the roughing gouge. It is my favorite, but can't use it for this. If you're making a bowl, you use a bowl gouge. And I do have the speed kind of slow because I am roughing it in. If it's an odd shape, you definitely want to go slow. As it gets more round, you can speed it up. So I'm going at 900 right now. Alright, I am going to speed it up because this is very symmetrical. Oh, I was going at 520. That's too slow for this piece. My favorite is 1400. Alright, and we are going to go my pencil. I'm going to cut it into about there. Looks about right. Alright, now here I'm going to switch to a skew. Cut a dovetail in it just to help it hold in the chuck better. Alright, now I'm done with the flange, so I'm going to take this back out. Always hold the chuck, unscrew with your left hand or your right, whichever way you have it facing. Unscrew with the handle, don't unscrew the chuck because it can fall off, damage the threads. Put it back on. Once you get it started, you can spin it. Alright, then I'm going to take off the flange, and that's the last I will use of the flange, just to get us a good tenon started. Sometimes if you're making a bowl, you can do the bowl shape, but that I recommend watch a bunch of videos, watch how a lot of people do it. This is just how to use the all the different chucks. Okay, save my screws. Probably replace the screws every 5 or 6 times. Alright, now get the tool rest as close as you can without hitting. Don't want to get your finger stuck down in there. And now we can turn. Actually, I'm going to make sure I got these tight. Right that still got a little bump there. That's my favorite sound when it goes from square, bumpy to smooth. You can hear in the, you can just hear it in the tool. Now sometimes at this point, if it's a big bowl, I'll actually turn the tenon on the other side just in case this one breaks, if I have the extra material. Sometimes you don't have that luxury. But what we could do is we could turn a mortise getting a little far away from my tool. That's what that vibration is. Put a little dovetail on the inside of our mortise. Okay, now the mortise only needs to be as deep as the dovetail lip on the chuck. Does not need to be super deep. You don't want it to rest on the back or your tenon to rest on the inside back, because if that wood is crooked, you might get it in there crooked. So put that on, tighten it up. You want to tighten this a little bit, not quite as hard as your tenon, because it could crack out. And this is usually just for finishing. Your tenon is for the bulk of the work. And then you can go in and take the tenon off or reshape it or whatever. Alright, so that is the jaw chuck and the flange chuck. I think it's called a flange chuck. I am also still a beginner. I've only been doing this since April, and I have a really bad memory for names like that, so bear with me. They all kind of make sense to me. Alright, the next one is the screw chuck, and this works with the jaw chuck. So the flange, this one would have come with the lathe. And this one would have come with the chuck because of the sizing. So with that, I've measured this as 3/8 screw chuck, and I'm going to use a 5/16 drill bit. You can see I've got it marked for the depth to match up with the depth. I don't want to go any deeper than I have to. So this would be a brand new piece of wood. I'm going to find the center. If you're drilling into end grain, you want to use a smaller bit because end grain will not hold the teeth as good as side grain. Alright, so what I do then is I will put this screw chuck into the jaw chuck. And some of them go all the way in and clamp at the back. This particular one, and actually I think there's two different ways. I think you can use that to clamp in the back, but I noticed that it doesn't seem to hold as good. I'm pretty sure it's made because of the bevel to mount right here in the front, and actually in the instructions it says to make sure that it's flush and the wood you want all the way against. So right there you can see that screw chuck face is flush. Then I'm gonna put this wood on. Never run that on with the power of the lathe. Always do it by hand. If I can get a better Can't hold it and do it. So one thing you don't want is you don't want to turn like that. You want that wood right up against the chuck. So I'm going to hold on. Sometimes I'll put the chuck key in and turn against it and get that thing all the way up, and it'll pull itself flush with that face. You want that all the way up there. Alright, and then I'm going to put and with the screw chuck, I don't trust it even as much as the flange, so I will use the live center. And now the first thing I'm going to do is turn the tenon. Okay, so I got my tenon. So I've got my tenon. Now I take this out. Turn that around. Clamp it in. Probably a better way to take the screw chuck off, but since I don't clamp this in the back of the jaw, I just get some pliers. Put my chuck key in, get started, and turn it off like that. And now I can make the inside of the bowl. So anytime you're putting a screw chuck in or a flange chuck, you want to put that on the inside of the bowl because you'll remove that material. So the tenon would typically be the bottom of the bowl. Now that it's in the chuck, I can finish the shape. And again, this is just a piece of scrap, but so you can see when it's in the chuck, you can handle it a little bit more. And there you go, one piece of wood, and I've demonstrated all of the chucks I have. I do have a drill chuck. I actually forget what it's. There's a name for it. This just fits into the end stock. Jams in there, does not move. So as you're turning your piece, you run this in, and you can drill it. This was extra invaluable. I love this. And that is a Morris taper number 2. I did get a pen mandrel. I also have a pen mandrel that I bought it and didn't. I think I got it before the lathe came, and it had a Morris taper 1, and I had to get a Morris taper 2 adapter, and then I had to grind it a little bit to fit. This is probably more for a drill press, but I did get the MT2 adapter, and then this is for making pens. So I forgot to talk about the drive spur. This one comes with the lathe. It's the easiest to use. You jam the wood onto the drive spur, put your live center on the other side, and you turn it. You can turn your tenon in and then flip it around and put it in the chuck. So yeah, I forgot about the drive spur. That's the one that I use the most. I put the drive spur, the live center, turn it round, put a tenon on it, put it in the chuck, flip everything around. So there is that. Thanks. Hey guys, it's been fun. Thanks. Be sure to subscribe, share. Anybody you know that has this lathe or thinking about it, feel free to share, and we'll see you in the next video.